Thank you both so much for being here.
Thanks for having us. This is a pleasure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Travon, you've constructed an amazing piece of art. Um, it's being considered for an Academy Award. And let's talk about your inspiration for this. Let's open with that.
Yeah, I mean, this story came from just the raw feeling I felt around last summer when I was internalizing all the stories we kept seeing and hearing about, from Ahmaud Arbery to Breonna to George, and then Elijah McClain, and all the things that were popping up last summer. And, I felt like with each one of those, as a Black person, who Black American, you go through this cycle of emotions, processing each one of those, where you're angry and you're sad and you're hopeless, and then you find a way to accept it and get yourself back to life. And it happens so frequently that you go through that cycle so close together that you find those cycles overlapping with each other. And you're like, I'm still mad about Brianna, but I'm still like sad about this one, and doing all these things. And so it was noticing that feeling of feeling like you're living in the worst version of Groundhog's Day that you can imagine. And that, having that thought, is kind of what put the movie in my head. And I was like, maybe there's a way to actually create a short form piece of content, a short form film that could convey that emotion to the world at large.
Yeah. So I felt there was symbolism that showed how these occurrences have become a norm, and that men of color have this tenacity to keep moving forward and approach each day. When creating this short film, how intentional was that?
I really wanted that to be, a big part of, what the film represented. I wanted people to, I mean, like, for people like us, or for Black people, it's not something you don't already know. And it's supposed to represent to the world how you feel. It's supposed to be something you can point at and go, this is how I feel every day. This is how I feel a lot of the time. And for white people and everyone else to see it and go, oh, I have a better understanding now of what it feels like to be you after that 28 minutes of, gut wrenching, trauma and pain I just witnessed on film. And so it's supposed to represent two things for both groups, because it can't be the same thing for both of us. It's not meant to be, and it's no way it can be, because there's no Black person who's unfamiliar with that phenomenon. And the ones, aside from the ones who willfully ignore it, and we know who they are, they'll go unnamed, but
Yeah.
it's the only way for it to be. And the message we've gotten back is that the white people who watch our movie feel that, and I've gotten a lot of messages from people who say they understand it differently now, seeing it laid out that way.
Wow.
Because there is a disconnect between having one story happen, sometimes a week passes and another one happens, or a month passes and another one happens, but you're seeing this happen in succession over and over again, and you're watching one person internalize that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I sort of feel like, it's 29 minutes, but it's a 29 minutes where there's no conversation to be had about it. You're completely submerged in it, and you have to go through it. A person that's viewing it can't have an input. They just have to take it all in. So that's why I appreciate this so much.
Yeah.
One of the many things that I loved about this short was how much of a light Zarya was. She was supportive. She didn't try to fix the problem for him, but she did offer suggestions when he asked. And I think that as Black women, a lot of times we're passionate, and that passion can become heavier than the actual trauma. So was that intentional? the way that you penned that?
It felt very intentional. It felt like the writing of it kind of told me what Perry was to Carter, but also who Perry was to herself.
Yeah.
And she reminded me of like all the great matriarchs in my family and my mother, my aunts, and every woman that raised me to be the strong Black woman that I hope myself to be.
Yeah.
And she, like, exactly what you said, she wasn't going to go out and solve his problem. But if he asked, she was going to give him the real and be like, well, why don't you try this? Why don't you do that? I
Yeah.
think that's right. It is oftentimes pushed on to us to be the anchor or the sound mind or the sounding board. And I think she did a really great job of balancing being her own person and also being supportive.
I agree. I also feel like it was a good way to show the type of support that is needed because it doesn't just happen to men of color, it happens to women of color as well. So just seeing how a partner can show up in this type of situation, I felt like that was amazing. I
Thank you.
appreciated that so much, and you did well with it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Travon, Carter was humanized in so many ways. We got a glimpse into who he is throughout the film. He loves sneakers, he's a cartoonist, he's charming, he's funny, he loves his dog like people love their children. Who was your inspiration for his character?
I mean, Carter is a combination of myself and then, you know, wanting him to also feel like anyone could step into his shoes.
Yeah,
And I felt like that was properly executed when white people started telling me they identify with Carter.
oh, amazing.
and and how he was so everyman and so human and so not at all coming off as a Black man going through this experience. They saw him as a person going through that experience. They saw him and they connected to that. And that to me was the marker of, success when it came to that character, where it wasn't like people were saying, yeah, that like it's so sad that a Black guy had to go through that. It was always like I felt like I was going through that. And I was like, that's exactly what we wanted. That's exactly how we wanted people to feel.
Yeah,
And it's the only way we can really get people to really take up our mantle, because words can only go so far. Having conversations and debates don't necessarily make people feel what you feel. It's always being intellectualized. But when you're watching a movie and your brain has to take that off and just absorb the images and make it and feel how it wants you to feel, there's nothing you can do about that. You just have to accept
yeah.
it. And so many people have, been opened up by it.
Yes, it was so eloquent how you presented it because I feel like some things can come across really direct and in a sense of a lot of people try to send this same message, but they say, well, I'm a Black man and this is why this is happening. And that's the end of the conversation because the person is immediately like, I don't want to have this conversation again.
Right.
But you didn't say what was obvious, but you rather took the approach to humanizing him and making him align with just the everyday people of the world.
Yeah, that was important to make people not turn off from it or turn away from it.
Yes, absolutely. So this was a really short window between development and the finished project. What influenced your urgency? Was it the climate of the country, like the quarantine coupled with injustices? Was it the need for a creative outlet of maybe things that you were suppressing? What made you feel that this short film had to be made and it had to be made now?
It was definitely because I wanted it to be as quick of a response to what we were seeing as possible. And it was an opportunity for myself and Martin and all the other creative people I knew who've been sitting around at that point for 7 months to do something, to like both go back to work and do something meaningful.
Yeah.
And we were able to do both. And that's like, you can't ask for more. And so it was definitely, a conversation had come up about what if we just do this next year when everything is back to whatever normal looks like. And a lot of us pushed, me, Van, Zaria, like everybody pushed to do it now. And even as I was pushing initially, when I initially came up with it to do it now, um, some people's hesitations were like, what was like, well, coronavirus and money, raising money, and
Yeah.
how can we were staring down the impossible. And when we talked about it, we looked it in the face and said, well, let's go do the impossible. And we managed to make a film like this, and no one got sick. And
So great.
we managed to do it at a high level, at high quality, and it got us here.
That's awesome. Zarya, how do you feel about the timing of this whole project?
Yeah, I think I have to just echo what Travon has said, and also add that, it felt like, and it still feels like to this day, that it feels like this film tells us what it wants, and Travon has said that previously in writing it, he had an idea, and the film told him. And so the only thing that I can ascertain from that is it just feels like our ancestors and those that are going that went through this on the other side, really are just pushing this through for us. Because if you would have told any of us to do this and tell us every hurdle that came, I think everyone would be like, all right, so next year, okay, great.
Yeah.
And so it just really feels magnificent and spiritual, and to do this in the middle of a pandemic, and when George Floyd protests were just internationally blowing up, it really felt like, okay, what can we do? How can we put our art to work? And it felt like we were just carried, and we just continuously are carried.
Yeah, like everything just aligned, like it just worked out.
Yes, in ways that you're like, what?
That's amazing. So there's a scene in the film where Carter is talking to the officer and he asks him why he chose to become a police officer. The officer's response is somewhere along the lines of he was bullied and he never wanted to be bullied again. So Trayvon, can you unpack that for me?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of people who end up becoming cops are oftentimes the kid from the neighborhood who never had any power,
Mhm.
and always and was made to feel powerless. And now he has all the power. And so that narrative is so pervasive among police officers. Of It's like, who signs up to become a police officer versus who signs up for the military. And I think those are two similar things, but two very different things. And it's one thing to want to
Absolutely.
serve your country. It's another thing to want to quote unquote put away bad guys. And and I think there's a reason why they search for very particular types. They discard people who are too smart or to have too high IQs, which we know happens. And uh, they want people who fall in line much more with being, robots who are told what to do and they do it. And for me, it felt like that was an opportunity to show both sides of that coin, where he gives the answer that they all give, that everybody says is written on all the documents and all the walls and everything and in the commercials. But the reality of it is, it's that same feeling of, I have power over people now, and I spent a long time not having it, and I never have to feel that again. And that to me is a problem, because those are the people you shouldn't be employing to have this kind of power, is the person who is approaching it with a payback mentality.
Mm.
And so I wanted him and Carter to have that moment where we called him out, basically, where he says, you know, I used to I got bullied a lot. Now I put him away, and you know, he says, oh, so you became one.
I'm sure that you, Zaria, like the rest of us, were experiencing the anguish that we all felt as a social unrest swept the country. The unrest was a direct result of the killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, um, and the many that preceded them. So, what did it mean for you to be in a project that was such like so crucial and historic for this time for us?
I don't think I can ever repay Two Distant Strangers for the gift that it is. And I say that to say that in those months where it was both exciting and hopeful and dreadful, that, you know, it felt like, oh, maybe this time we've finally woken up. All it took was a pandemic and someone kneeling on someone else for 9 minutes and 46 seconds in front of a whole crowd, you know, sarcasm, obviously. But, and so it was also that knowledge and that wisdom of how soon will they forget? And Two Distant Strangers is so pervasive and so incredibly powerful to make you remember, and make you remember why you marched, and make you remember why you made those signs, and make you remember why the world was so upset. And so to be able to use my craft and what I love to do, and also to be able to be the Black woman in the film, it felt like the heaviest and most responsible, like the most responsibility I've ever been rewarded with. And I think I felt that most during that third death scene. I don't know how much I'm spoiling, but I think I felt it most then, because all I could think about was Breonna Taylor. All I could think about was her partner waking up and not knowing what was happening, and then being framed, and it felt like a gift that I was receiving, to be able to try to show people how traumatic and how scary that moment could be, that I haven't even personally experienced, thank God, you know?
Yeah, I think it was also a gift to us all. So I definitely understand your sentiment.
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah.
was there anything else that you all feel that maybe the audience didn't connect with? Anything that you want to add, or anything that you want us to take away from it overall?
You know, I've felt like I felt great about how people have responded and connected with the movie.
Mhm.
Like I really haven't run into any situation where I felt like I needed to recontextualize or explain the movie to anyone, which I think is, you know, as filmmaking and writing goes, you rarely get that lucky.
Yeah,
And so, you know, I just hope people continue to see the film, feel it, and understand it for what it is, and to want to share it and to want to use it to start conversations around the issue that it concerns, and for, you know, hopefully white people and non-Black people who watch the film walk away having a little more empathy for what we're going through on a
absolutely.
regular basis, even when you don't see the videos and don't hear about them in your feeds or on your news network. But we know that they're still happening.
Right. I think something that Travon said in the beginning was just the stark contrast of what Black Americans feel watching this, and what, or, you know, Black people around the world, honestly, and white people feel. And I think that it reminds me of Get Out. It reminds me that when we watched Get Out, we were like, is this sci-fi or is this real?
Right.
And I feel like Two Distant Strangers has that effect too, in that it has the sci-fi element, but it has much more truth than the sci-fi element. It's much more a metaphor. And so I'd hope that when someone sees, oh, a Groundhog's Day device used, I hope that they are open to, and they have been, but I hope that they continue to be open to realizing that it's so much more truth than sci-fi.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I really thank you both for being here on behalf of myself and Hollywood Melanie. We wish you all so much luck and success throughout the award voting process, and anything that this receives, you all truly deserve. We appreciate you both so much.
Thank you. Thank you for
You're
having us.
welcome. Thank you all. Take care.